Welcome to Intelligent Automation Radio, the number one podcast for IT executives seeking insights on the impact and opportunities for innovation that automation is delivering to businesses around the world. Featuring thought leaders in AI, machine learning, orchestration, security automation, and the future of work. And now, on with the show. Welcome, everyone. My name is Guy Nadivi, and I'm the host of Intelligent Automation Radio. Our guest on today's episode is Mark Gray, Digital Transformation Director for Crown Prosecution Service, the principal public prosecuting agency for conducting criminal prosecutions in England and Wales. We've never spoken before with anyone who's implemented digital transformation in law enforcement. And when you hear about what Mark and his team did, you'll see it was an epic transformation for any kind of organization. We wanted to find out more about it ourselves and see what lessons our audience could learn from Mark's experience. So we invited him to come on our show and share his considerable insights with us. Mark, welcome to Intelligent Automation Radio.
Thanks very much, Guy. Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here.
Mark, you rolled out a number of digital transformation projects for law enforcement, allowing your agency to eliminate, this is an amazing number, 160 million pages of paper annually, which is just staggering. Not just that, it also eliminated physical disks too, which is impressive. If this was a corporate project, its benefits would have been measured in ROI. How do you measure the benefits of your efforts from a law enforcement perspective?
It's a good question. So undoubtedly, we do track the kind of public sector equivalent metric of ROI. So of course, we have generated some direct cash efficiency savings in paper, in couriers, and so on. But I guess for us, it's the wider benefits that are more important. So we've made the justice process swifter. For example, people don't have to wait a couple of days for a disk to arrive. We've improved the information security because less things go astray in a digital world. We've improved the satisfaction and the experience for our own colleagues. So, for instance, the move to digital has enabled people to work much more flexibly rather than being kind of required to come into an office. And of course, there's the significant environmental benefits of the changes we've made. So there is absolutely an ROI element, but it's that kind of wider spectrum that we're really pleased with and proud of.
Automation, AI, and chatbots all played a role in your digital transformation. Can you talk a bit about some of the ways those technologies will be used going forward?
Yeah, sure. So I think we've spent a lot of time over the past 3 years or so putting the basics in place, removing a lot of challenges of kind of the legacy systems of the past and kind of future-proofing everything. And that enables the kind of technologies that you've just referred to really add value. So with regard to automation, we're looking at taking some of the kind of manual processes that that our colleagues do on a day-to-day basis and automating those. So an example might be when the police send us a piece of evidence into the prosecution service or a new case, that they flag whether the suspect in question is expected to plead guilty or not guilty to the charge. Now, of course, we never know for sure what they're likely to do, but that informs the kind of, the extent, the path down which it goes. They're listed in different courts depending on that. And similarly, as you would expect, the level of kind of preparation for the first hearing is different if you're expecting a not guilty plea compared to a guilty plea. And so one of the processes that we go through, therefore, is a cross-checking process that says, which box has the police officer ticked, and is that kind of consistent with where the court have listed this case, and also with the evidence that's actually presented. Does the statement from the defendant kind of corroborate that? That is a very manual process, and one that could be relatively easily undertaken by a kind of robotic process. So we're looking at things like that. With regard to chatbots, I think those will be primarily colleague facing. So providing our users with better self-service options around their technology-related issues, queries, ideas. And with regard to artificial intelligence, one of the big changes and challenges that's occurred in law enforcement over recent years is the enormous proliferation of digital evidence. So, if there's a crime or an alleged crime now, it's likely that there's closed circuit television of it. It's likely that any witnesses may well have taken out their cell phone and recorded the footage of that. It's likely that there's social media interactions involving the participants. None of these were around kind of 5-10 years ago, and so that the volumes of data have just increased exponentially. And so actually, where we see AI playing a role is in helping both the police officers, the investigators, but also our prosecuting lawyers to kind of wade through those volumes of digital evidence and to kind of assist their review. We don't think that criminal justice is a space where it would be right certainly in the foreseeable future for kind of technology to take the place of the reviewing lawyer. But we think that there's a good opportunity there to make those people's lives easier, which in turn should improve the quality of outcomes flowing through the justice system.
And yet, I imagine there was a lot of resistance to change at Crown Prosecution Service with some entrenched mindsets advocating for maintaining the status quo of paper. How did you overcome psychological and cultural impedance to your efforts?
It's a good question. I think the key thing has been trying to show people the benefits. So, and I mean that on a really kind of day-to-day granular level. So, it's a benefit that you no longer need to get in a taxi or bring your car to go to do the 5-minute walk from the office to the court, because actually you don't need to carry 4 boxes of paper anymore. It's a big benefit that we've through this process we've moved away from local IT servers into kind of centralized resilient platforms. So showcasing the times when actually one of our officers right now has experienced a flood. And the business impact of that 3 or 4 years ago would have been astronomical, because there'd have been no functioning technology for that office and no ability to access the paper for several weeks on end. Now it's almost a non-event from a business continuity perspective. I think another thing to change those mindsets is really listening to users. So kind of collaborative design. We've built a network of digital champions across the country, so people are kind of hearing about these changes not from me and my team, who might be perceived to be in the kind of in the proverbial ivory tower, but actually from their peers and colleagues who are genuinely experiencing the same things. I think that's been really impactful. Another element of that listening is kind of making sure we fix the things that might be small technologically, but really annoying for users. So I'll give you one example, if I may, which is when I arrived here, our remote access service was configured to time out after 4 hours for security reasons. But of course, if you're a prosecutor at court, you typically get there at 8:30 in the morning to prepare for the day's hearings, and the morning session at court runs till 1 o'clock. So of course, 4 hours, an incredibly annoying timeout, because it's right in the period where you're standing up in court presenting your case. So little things like that, the technology change required to find the number 4, delete it, and put in a bigger number is trivial. But actually, in terms of kind of winning winning people's hearts and minds, that's been really impactful. But hey, it's a really good question you ask, and I would say we haven't got it all right. There's absolutely more to do, and in particular, we still need to make sure that that those of our users who are not naturally digitally savvy, who aren't living kind of a digital life 24/7 as some of us do, that we don't leave those colleagues behind. It's really, really, really important.
Given that your project broke a lot of ground in terms of how advanced a law enforcement agency's IT operations can be, what impact has this digital transformation had on your ability to attract IT talent compared to when you were primarily a paper-based organization?
It's a hard question because our whole setup is just completely different. It really is comparing apples with oranges. I guess we have definitely found that we are more attractive to talent because the opportunities are so much greater, and frankly the scope of work is much more interesting. And we found both in attracting people from within the Crown Prosecution Service to come and work in the digital team, and in attracting people from across government or from the private sector, we've definitely noticed that it's also, of course, much more demanding on our talent, both old and new. It's much harder to manage a kind of a dynamic mission critical environment than a relatively stable and unchanging sort of support system. So yeah, it's definitely the talent space definitely been a big sort of step up, and we've had to make sure that our whole processes and our setup and our people are ready to manage in a digital world.
So looking back, what functions at CPS and the justice system in general were the most difficult to digitally transform?
I guess it's those that directly touch the wider public. So in criminal justice, there's a really difficult balance to get between transformation and digitalization of processes, while making sure that justice is still served, making sure that justice is still accessible to everyone. So all our major trials, our Crown Court trials, are trial by jury. So there are 12 members of that jury, and it's really important that that all 12 of those people are presented with the relevant information in a way that they find accessible. And so you can't just kind of blaze ahead and replace all the paper with iPads and expect that that everyone on that jury can cope with that. And in fact, I would say you talked about some of our paper savings, and that the last real remaining vestige of paper in the criminal justice system is some of the kind of jury papers for exactly that reason. So I think that those bits that we can kind of directly control and work with our staff on are for all the reasons you described earlier, are very challenging, but are easier than those bits that touch the public. I guess the other thing to say in the context of difficulty is the sort of technical infrastructure has been a real challenge. So we receive about a terabyte of multimedia evidence every single day, and so you can imagine that our kind of network architecture was of say 5 years ago was not scaled for anything like that. And so actually how we've kind of had to re-architect our whole infrastructure to accommodate that burden has been, I guess, the other big sort of the other big challenge along the way.
Mark, I think a number of people would be curious, how has your digital transformation project affected CPS's relationships with its IT service providers?
Oh, I think the one-word answer is massively. So we have, through this process and through the kind of increased focus on digital, we have moved from what was essentially a single supplier outsourced model to a multi-supplier model supported by the kind of enhanced internal capability I was talking about earlier. And that internal capability both provides a large number of services directly and provides the kind of oversight layer across all the suppliers. I think we've demanded much more flexibility, much more speed and agility, much more volume of change from our suppliers than we had before, and of course that's been a sort of a learning curve for them. The kind of we'd had one supplier who'd been a very long-standing and very very positive relationship supplier, but that again it's a big shift from managing a business as usual, relatively stable service, particularly one that's kind of a support for an organisation, to running one that's that's fast changing, that's transforming rapidly, that's very dynamic, and so and that is absolutely mission critical. If our case management system doesn't work, then it's no exaggeration to say that the criminal justice system of this country grinds to a halt. So it's definitely I guess made the supplier relationships and environment much more intense, much more competitive, and much more dynamic.
What about the impact digital transformation has had on the organizational hierarchy at CPS? Is it still pretty centralized, or are you a flatter, more agile agency now?
It's a tough question. I think I don't think it's so much been about the hierarchy as such, but there has undoubtedly been a kind of significant cultural dimension to the change, and in particular, I think the kind of things like the managerial trust in people to how they manage their work. It's the ability for people to work remotely from their managers is something that that simply didn't exist a few years ago, and actually that changes that relationship and those behaviours quite substantially. We're now kind of seen across UK government as a leader, as a flagship for that kind of flexible, smarter working, and because we have kind of 90+% of our colleagues work remotely every quarter, and so I don't think it's particularly changed the hierarchical structure, but it has definitely kind of changed the interpersonal dynamics and getting that balance right between kind of absolutely trusting people to work flexibly, between judging them on their outputs and inputs, but also not losing all the benefits of and kind of cohesion associated with people being co-located.
Mark, you came to Crown Protection Services from the private sector. What was it like adjusting to the public sector?
It was an interesting change. My experience is that every organisation I've worked for has been quite markedly different, and that it's not necessarily a public versus private split so much as an organisational dynamic split. That said, I guess if I was going to pick out a couple of big sort of changes I noted when joining this organisation, I think the biggest positive has been the phenomenal passion that people have for the end cause. So whether you're a frontline lawyer through to somebody working in a back office corporate function, everybody is really passionate about doing a good job because they recognise that makes the justice process better, which in turn makes the society in which we live in better. And while of course in the private sector people are absolutely motivated by the company doing well, by generating shareholder value, perhaps by their own bonus or reward or whatever, and that kind of underlying passion for the cause is something that I've really noticed. I guess on the sort of flip side, I think a big part of what I needed to do is to make people believe that transformation at pace was possible. So some of the stereotypes are undoubtedly true, and we have cut through some of the kind of some of the unnecessary bureaucracy where it's not serving a purpose, and just making people realise that actually, when you pull out the stops, you can make things happen in a very transformational way at pace, and almost not constraining themselves and really pushing and really driving things through. I think that's been the biggest thing that that perhaps wasn't there so much as a natural default in the public sector, that we've really kind of worked on that, turbocharging the transformation.
Mark, were there any skills you found were most effective at automating IT operations, particularly in a public sector organization?
I think, I think there's a few. I think, to exactly the previous point, I think drive and energy have been really, really key skills, and I guess tenacity relatedly. So it's making sure that I and my teams really push things through and follow up on things. And if things aren't moving, then kind of systematically unblock them rather than just saying, I've sent an email to Fred and so therefore I've done my bit. It's actually, if Fred isn't coming back or if it's stuck somewhere down the line, it's kind of really chasing that through, really following through. I think there's undoubtedly a skill of kind of juggling many things at the same time and sort of judging what the most important is and where the relative priorities lie, and taking risk-based judgments, risk in all senses of the word. I think that's been really important. I think there's something about recognizing the limitations of what you can do as well. So I touched on earlier on the judgment of prosecutors as a good example of things that can't easily be automated, and similarly some of the discussion around where jurors, what are the requirements of jurors. I think, frankly, there's nothing more irritating to an organisation than somebody who kind of blazes in and promises everything, and actually recognising that there are some genuine constraints, and that if those constraints aren't genuine, we'll knock them down. If they are genuine, then we'll work with people to kind of work through those, which I guess brings me to the final skill that springs to mind, which is that kind of collaboration and communication, both kind of within our organisation and externally. Most organisations have complex networks of stakeholders. My experience so far is that the government has particularly complex networks of stakeholders, and actually that kind of working collectively and collaboratively is really, really key.
For the CIOs, CTOs, and other IT executives listening in, what is your one big must-have piece of advice you'd like them to take away from our discussion with regards to digitally transforming an organization?
Good question. I think I would go. I'd come back on the final point I've just made. However much you think it's about the technology, it's not really about the technology. It's all about the people. So listen to them, explain honestly to them, both the good and the bad. When things go wrong, don't hide. Tell them what's gone wrong and why it won't happen again. And bring them along that journey with you, because the kind of the technology side of things is one lens, but true transformation requires the people and the culture of an organization to shift as well.
Excellent. All right, looks like that's all the time we have on this episode of Intelligent Automation Radio. Mark, thank you for being our first guest from law enforcement and providing us with a perspective on digitally transforming law enforcement IT. It's been great having you on the show.
It's been a pleasure.
Mark Gray, Digital Transformation Director for Crown Prosecution Service. Thank you for listening, everyone. And remember, don't hesitate. Automate. Thank you so much for listening today. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. We publish new shows regularly, and you won't want to miss one. And please remember to give us a rating. It helps others find the show. Intelligent Automation Radio is sponsored by Ayehu, the leader in intelligent automation solutions for IT and cybersecurity. You can get more information about Ayehu by visiting our website at ayehu.com. That's AYEHU.com. Ayehu, creating the successful path to the self-driving enterprise.